Discipline is the foundation. Success is not a moment. It's not a breakthrough. It's not a viral win or sudden recognition. Success is a system, and discipline is the foundation of that system. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's punishment, restriction, a lack of freedom. But discipline is not about control from the outside. It's about control from within. Without discipline, your life is reactive. You respond to moods. You respond to circumstances. You respond to comfort. With discipline, your life becomes intentional. You act because you decided to, not because you felt like it. That difference changes everything. Every strong life you admire is built on disciplined behavior you don't see. Early mornings, no one applauds. Repetition, no one posts. Consistency, no one celebrates. But that's where real power is created. Discipline doesn't make life harder. It makes life clearer. When your standards are clear, decisions become easier. You don't debate whether to show up. You don't negotiate with laziness. You don't wait for motivation. You act. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Discipline stays. That's why people who rely on motivation keep starting over. And people who rely on discipline keep moving forward. Discipline is choosing the long-term reward over the short-term comfort. Comfort is tempting. It feels harmless. But comfort, repeated daily, creates weakness, weak focus, weak habits, weak resilience. Discipline builds strength quietly, one decision at a time. You don't wake up disciplined. You become disciplined by doing what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. That's the training ground. Every time you act against resistance, you build trust with yourself. And self-trust is everything. When you trust yourself, you move faster. You hesitate less. You doubt less. Most people don't lack talent. They lack self-trust. They've broken promises to themselves too many times. Discipline repairs that relationship. It says, I will do what I said I would do. No audience required. No reward needed. Just execution. Discipline simplifies life. You stop chasing shortcuts. You stop looking for hacks. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You work with what you have. Right now, where you are. Most people wait for confidence. Confidence is built after action, not before. You don't feel confident and then act. You act, and confidence follows. That's discipline. Doing first, feeling later. Life rewards reliability. If you show up once, it means nothing. If you show up repeatedly, you become dependable. Dependable people are trusted. Trusted people are given responsibility. Responsibility creates opportunity. That's how progress compounds. Discipline is not intensity. It's consistency. You don't need extreme effort. You need repeatable effort. Effort you can sustain. Even on bad days. Bad days matter more than good ones. Anyone can perform when they feel inspired. Discipline is showing up when you feel tired, bored, or uncertain. Those days build the base. If you quit on bad days, you'll never reach great ones. Discipline teaches patience. Not passive waiting, but active persistence. You keep doing the work without immediate reward. That's rare, and rarity creates value. Most people want fast results because they don't trust the process. But the process always works if you stay long enough. Discipline is staying long enough. You don't need to win today. You need to show up today. Wins come later. Discipline also protects you. It protects you from impulsive decisions, from emotional reactions, from self-sabotage. When emotions rise, discipline keeps you grounded. You don't need to suppress emotions. You just don't let them lead. Feelings are weather. Discipline is direction. If you let weather decide direction, you'll never arrive anywhere. Direction must be chosen in advance. That's discipline. You decide your standards before pressure appears. So when pressure comes, you don't collapse. You execute. Discipline creates identity. You stop saying, "I'm trying." You start saying, "This is what I do." Identity changes behavior faster than motivation ever will. When discipline becomes identity, quitting feels unnatural. Skipping feels wrong. Not because someone is watching, but because you are. That internal standard is real power. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be exact. Clear goals, clear routines, clear priorities. Discipline thrives on clarity. Confusion breeds procrastination. Simplify. Decide what matters. Remove what doesn't. Energy is limited. Spend it intentionally. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Consistently. That's how ordinary actions create extraordinary outcomes. Not overnight, over time. And time rewards discipline. Every day you practice discipline, you move slightly ahead of who you were yesterday. That gap grows, slowly, quietly, until one day, the difference is undeniable. That's when people call it talent. They didn't see the discipline. They never do. Focus, sacrifice, and the cost of growth. Growth has a price. Not money, not talent, not luck. The real price of growth is focus. Focus demands sacrifice. And sacrifice is where most people stop. Everyone wants progress. Very few are willing to give up what progress requires. Because growth is not about adding more. It's about removing what no longer serves you. You cannot move forward while carrying everything with you. At some point, you must decide what stays and what goes. Focus is not about doing many things well. It's about doing fewer things with full attention. Attention is power. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Most people leak attention constantly. Scrolling, comparing, reacting, consuming without intention. They wonder why they feel tired, why progress feels slow, why clarity never comes. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from focusing longer. Focus is uncomfortable. It forces you to sit with boredom, with uncertainty, with repetition. The mind resists focus because focus removes escape routes. When you focus, you can't hide. You face your limits, your weaknesses, your excuses. That's why distraction is attractive. Distraction numbs responsibility. But distraction is expensive. It costs you momentum. Every time you switch tasks, you reset progress. Every time you chase something new, you abandon something unfinished. Unfinished effort doesn't compound. Only completed effort does. Focus means committing before you see results. That's the hardest part. You work in silence, while doubt speaks loudly. You don't get feedback. You don't get applause. You get uncertainty. And uncertainty demands faith. Not blind faith. Faith built on discipline. You trust the process because you're executing it correctly. Most people quit right before focus pays off. They mistake delay for failure. But delay is normal. Growth has latency. The work happens first. The results follow later. If you break focus too early, you never reach the payoff. Focus also requires saying no. No to invitations. No to impulses. No to short-term pleasure. Not forever, but for now. People misunderstand sacrifice. They think sacrifice is loss. It's not. Sacrifice is exchange. You give up something good for something better. Temporary comfort for permanent progress. Entertainment for development. Ease for capability. You don't lose time. You invest it. Focus sharpens identity. When you focus on one direction, your actions align. Alignment reduces internal conflict. You stop feeling pulled apart. You stop feeling scattered. That internal calm creates strength. Strong people are not chaotic. They are clear. They know what matters. They know what they're building. And because of that, they can endure discomfort. Discomfort without direction feels pointless. Discomfort with purpose feels meaningful. Focus gives discomfort meaning. It turns struggle into progress. Most people want balance. Balance is a luxury, earned after focus. In the beginning, you don't need balance. You need obsession. Not unhealthy obsession. Directed obsession. A season of saying no, so you can later say yes freely. Every successful person had a period of imbalance. A period where growth came before comfort. If you try to keep everything, you build nothing. Focus demands courage. Courage to disappoint others. Courage to be misunderstood. Courage to walk alone. Not everyone will support your focus. Some will feel threatened. Some will feel abandoned. Some will question your priorities. That's normal. When you change direction, people who benefited from your distraction will resist. You don't need their approval. You need your results. Focus is not permanent isolation. It's temporary prioritization. You step back to step forward. You narrow your world to expand your future. Focus also creates speed. Not frantic speed. Effective speed. When energy is not scattered, progress accelerates. One clear goal beats 10 vague ones. One focused hour beats a distracted day. Most people confuse movement with progress. Focus creates progress. Progress builds confidence. Confidence reinforces focus. That loop is powerful, but it only starts when you choose to commit. No half effort, no constant switching. Commitment is saying, I will see this through, even when it's slow, even when it's hard, even when it's quiet, especially when it's quiet. Because silence is where mastery grows. Focus is not about intensity today. It's about direction every day. You don't need perfect focus. You need consistent focus. Protect it. Schedule it. Defend it. Respect it. Your future depends on it. Consistency, time, and the power of repetition. Most people overestimate what they can do in one day and underestimate what they can do in 1 year. That misunderstanding destroys progress. They start fast. They push hard. They burn out. Then they quit. Not because they're incapable, but because they're inconsistent. Consistency is not exciting. It doesn't create dramatic moments. It doesn't feel heroic. But consistency is unstoppable. It doesn't rely on mood. It doesn't depend on circumstances. It simply continues. Repetition is the real engine of growth. Not intensity, not talent, not luck. Repetition. Doing the same small actions again and again until they become automatic. Automatic behavior requires less effort. Less effort means less resistance. Less resistance means more longevity. That's how people last. Most people try to change everything at once. New routine, new mindset, new habits, new identity. That approach fails. Change sticks when it's boring enough to be sustainable. Consistency is choosing actions you can repeat, even on your worst days. Bad days are not exceptions. They are part of the process. If your plan only works when you feel good, it's not a plan. It's a fantasy. Consistency respects reality. It accepts fatigue. It accepts doubt. It accepts imperfection. And it keeps moving anyway. Time multiplies what you repeat. If you repeat distraction, time multiplies regret. If you repeat discipline, time multiplies progress. Time is neutral. It doesn't reward intention. It rewards behavior. Whatever you practice, you become better at. That's why habits matter more than goals. Goals give direction. Habits create movement. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. Repetition builds identity quietly. You don't wake up one day and decide who you are. You become who you repeatedly act as. If you show up every day, you become reliable. If you avoid discomfort every day, you become fragile. If you practice focus every day, you become sharp. Identity is not chosen. It's earned. Consistency also removes fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty. When you repeat the same actions, you reduce the unknown. You know what to do. You know how long it takes. You know what effort feels like. That familiarity creates confidence. Not loud confidence, stable confidence. The kind that doesn't need approval. Most people chase motivation because they don't trust consistency. But motivation is just a spark. Consistency is the fire. Motivation starts things. Consistency finishes them. The mind will always resist repetition. It will say, "This isn't working. You should try something new. You're wasting time." That voice appears right before results start to compound. Repetition has a delay. The first phase feels useless. The second phase feels slow. The third phase feels natural. The fourth phase looks impressive. Most people quit in phase 1 or 2. They never reach the payoff. Consistency also teaches humility. You accept that mastery takes time. You stop expecting shortcuts. You stop comparing timelines. You focus on execution, day after day. That humility is strength. It removes ego from the process. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to practice. Practice is not glamorous, but practice is powerful. Every repetition deepens neural pathways. Every repetition strengthens control. Every repetition sharpens skill. What once required effort eventually requires intention only. That's efficiency. Consistency also creates freedom. At first, discipline feels restrictive. Later, it feels liberating. When habits are solid, you don't waste energy deciding. You just act. That saved energy can be used for creativity, strategy, and growth. Inconsistency is expensive. It forces you to restart. Restarting costs motivation, confidence, and momentum. Consistency protects momentum. Even slow progress beats constant restarting. You don't need perfect days. You need complete days. Finish what you start, then repeat. Consistency compounds invisibly. People won't notice your progress until it's undeniable. They won't see the small improvements. They'll only see the result, and they'll call it overnight success. Let them. You know the truth. The truth is repetition. Daily, quiet, unimpressive, until it is. Stay with the process. Respect time, and let consistency do what intensity never can: pain, resistance, and mental strength. Every path worth walking has resistance. If there is no resistance, there is no growth. Most people misunderstand pain. They see it as a warning, a sign to stop, a signal that something is wrong. But pain is not always a threat. Often it's information. It tells you where your limits are, and limits are meant to be expanded. Resistance appears the moment you commit to change, not before. You decide to be disciplined. Resistance shows up. You decide to focus. Distraction gets louder. You decide to grow. Comfort fights back. That is not coincidence. That is the cost of progress. The mind is designed to protect the familiar, even if the familiar is limiting. That's why resistance feels personal. It feels like, "I'm not ready. This isn't the right time. I'll start tomorrow." Those thoughts are not truth. They are defense mechanisms. Mental strength is not about eliminating resistance. It's about moving forward. Despite it, strong minds don't feel less pain. They tolerate it better. They understand that discomfort is temporary, but regret is permanent. Pain asks a question: will you stay or will you retreat? Every time you stay, You get stronger, not physically first. Mentally, mental strength is built through exposure, small controlled exposure. To difficulty, you face discomfort. You don't break, you recover. That recovery rewires confidence. You start to trust yourself. Under pressure, pressure reveals truth. When things are easy, everyone looks disciplined. Pressure shows who you really are. Most people train only when conditions are perfect. That's a mistake. Perfect conditions don't build resilience. Imperfect conditions do. You don't need to enjoy pain. You need to respect it. Pain is a teacher. It teaches patience. It teaches humility. It teaches endurance. Avoiding pain keeps you fragile. Facing pain makes you adaptable. Adaptable people win long-term. Mental strength is the ability to stay present when things are uncomfortable. Not to panic, not to escape, not to overreact, just to continue. That calm continuation is power. Resistance also exposes priorities. If you quit easily, it wasn't important enough. That's not judgment. That's clarity. What you endure for reveals what you value. Strong people don't avoid hard things. They choose which hard things are worth enduring. Life is hard either way. You choose your difficulty, the pain of discipline, or the pain of regret. Both hurt. One builds, one destroys. Mental strength is choosing the pain. That moves you forward. You don't need to be fearless. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting, while fear is present. Fear loses power when it's ignored repeatedly. Not fought, ignored. You don't argue with fear. You act anyway. Action shrinks fear. Inaction feeds it. Resistance weakens when it's faced consistently. What once felt unbearable eventually feels manageable. That's adaptation. Mental strength also requires recovery. Not quitting, recovering. You push, you rest, you return. Burnout is not strength. Sustainable pressure is. You don't prove strength by destroying yourself. You prove it by returning again and again. That return builds toughness. Mental toughness is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't complain. It doesn't seek validation. It endures. When others stop, you continue. Not faster, longer. Pain is not the enemy. Avoidance is. Resistance is not the problem. Running is. Every time you stay, when it would be easier to quit, you add another layer to your strength, layer by layer, until one day, what breaks others doesn't even slow you down. That's mental strength. Earned, not given, identity, purpose, and becoming unstoppable. At some point, discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. That is the turning point. Before that point, you force yourself. After that point, you simply act. Because this is who you are. Identity is the strongest force in human behavior. You don't rise to what you want. You fall to who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you will quit. If you see yourself as someone who shows up. You will show up, no matter the circumstances. That's why real change is not about motivation. It's about identity shift. You don't need to convince yourself every day. You need to decide once who you are becoming and then behave accordingly. Purpose gives discipline direction. Without purpose, discipline feels empty. With purpose, discipline feels necessary. Purpose is not something mystical. It's not always passion. Often it's responsibility. Responsibility to your future self. Responsibility to your potential. Responsibility to not waste your time. Purpose answers one question: why does this matter? When the answer is clear, endurance increases. People don't quit because things are hard. They quit because things feel meaningless. Meaning gives pain value. It turns struggle into progress. Identity plus purpose creates stability. You stop needing external pressure. You stop needing reminders. You act because not acting violates who you are. That's when you become hard to stop. Unstoppable doesn't mean unstoppable force. It means unstoppable consistency. You don't rely on big moments. You rely on daily standards. Standards remove decision fatigue. You don't ask, should I do this today? You already decided. Standards protect you from weakness in moments of doubt. They carry you when motivation is gone. Unstoppable people are not extreme. They are exact. They know what they tolerate and what they don't. They don't negotiate with excuses. They don't dramatize effort. They do the work and move on. Purpose also filters opportunity. Not every opportunity is good. Some are distractions in disguise. When purpose is clear, you say no easily. You don't chase everything. You chase alignment. Alignment feels calm, even when the work is hard, because you know you're moving in the right direction. Becoming unstoppable does not happen suddenly. It happens quietly, through thousands of small decisions. No one notices, until one day, people say, "You're lucky. You're gifted. You're different." They didn't see the identity shift. They didn't see the discipline. They didn't see the sacrifices. They saw the result. And results speak louder than explanations ever could. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to rush. You don't need approval. You need patience with yourself and commitment to your standards. Growth is not linear. Some days feel powerful. Some days feel heavy. Both count, as long as you don't quit. Quitting resets identity. Continuing reinforces it. Every day you continue. You vote for the person you are becoming. Vote often. Vote consistently. Eventually, the old version of you has no support left, and the new version becomes permanent. That is transformation. Not dramatic, not loud, stable, earned. You don't become unstoppable by force. You become unstoppable by refusal to stop, refusal to abandon standards, refusal to betray purpose, refusal to return to who you were. And once that refusal is internalized, nothing external can break it. Because discipline is no longer something you do. It is who you are, silence, work, and the long game. Most people talk too much and do too little. They explain their plans. They announce their goals. They defend their intentions. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Real progress is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't convince. It doesn't ask for attention. It works. Silence is uncomfortable for people who rely on validation. But silence is powerful for people who rely on execution. When you stop explaining yourself, you save energy. When you stop seeking approval, you gain clarity. When you stop announcing goals, you increase the chance of finishing them. Because pressure disappears and focus increases. The long game is not exciting. It doesn't give instant rewards. It doesn't offer quick proof. That's why few people play it. Most people want fast feedback. Likes, praise, recognition. But the long game asks for patience. It asks you to trust effort before evidence, to work without witnesses, to improve without applause. That's uncomfortable, but that discomfort is where advantage is built. While others chase attention, you build skill. While others debate ideas, you build systems. While others react, you refine. The long game is about positioning. You're not trying to win today. You're trying to be impossible to ignore. In the future, that requires time. And time rewards those who don't quit early. Silence also protects momentum. When you talk less, you leak less energy. Words create pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety creates hesitation. Silence removes that chain. You act. You observe. You adjust. No drama. No performance. Just progress. Most people confuse confidence with loudness. Real confidence is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain. It doesn't compete. It continues. The long game also requires humility. You accept that mastery takes years, not weeks, not months, years. That acceptance changes behavior. You stop sprinting. You pace yourself. You build foundations. Instead of chasing shortcuts, shortcuts collapse under pressure. Foundations don't. When you commit to the long game, comparison loses power. You're not racing others. You're building yourself. At your speed. In your direction. That internal focus creates peace. Even when the work is hard. Especially then. The long game is won by those who show up on ordinary days, not just when it feels meaningful. Ordinary days create extraordinary outcomes. Repetition, refinement, patience. That's the formula. No secrets, no hacks, just time plus effort. Applied correctly. Silence helps you hear feedback, not opinions. Feedback from reality. What's working? What's not? You adjust without ego. You improve without drama. That's professionalism. Eventually, results speak for you. You won't need to explain what you do. People will see it. And when they ask how, you'll know the truth. It wasn't motivation. It wasn't luck. It was silence, work, and the refusal to quit. Before the long game paid off, no one is coming. At some point, you have to accept a hard truth. No one is coming to save you. No perfect moment. No perfect mentor. No perfect opportunity. Waiting is comfortable because it removes responsibility. But waiting changes nothing. Progress begins the moment you stop expecting rescue. Most people waste years. Hoping something external will change. More time, more support, more confidence, more motivation. But nothing external fixes internal hesitation. You don't need better conditions. You need better decisions. Responsibility is heavy. That's why many people avoid it. But responsibility is also power. The moment you take full ownership, you gain control. No blaming circumstances. No blaming people. No blaming timing. Just action. Imperfect action. Action without guarantees. That's how strength is built. When no one is coming, you stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop explaining. You stop waiting for approval. You focus on what you can control. Your effort, your discipline, your consistency. That focus is freeing. It removes pressure. You're no longer trying to impress. You're trying to improve. Improvement compounds. Validation doesn't. Most people want reassurance, but reassurance creates dependence. Self-respect is built when you keep promises to yourself, even small ones, especially small ones. You don't need to fix your entire life. You need to fix today. One task, one decision, one action done properly. Then repeat. Momentum is created by finished actions, not planned ones, not imagined ones, finished ones. No one is coming means excuses lose power. There's no one to negotiate with. There's no one to blame. There's only you and the standard you accept. Standards define outcomes. Low standards feel easy now and expensive later. High standards feel hard now and freeing later. Choose your cost. Discipline costs effort. Regret costs years. When no one is watching, character is built. When no one is helping, capability grows. When no one is cheering, identity forms. That identity is real. It doesn't disappear under pressure. It doesn't collapse when things get hard. Because it wasn't built on comfort. It was built on responsibility. You don't need to be special. You need to be reliable. Reliable to yourself. Show up. Do the work. Finish the task. Again and again and again. Eventually, you become the person others rely on. But first, you must rely on yourself. No one is coming. And that's not a weakness. That's the beginning of power. Boredom is the gateway. Most people are not stopped by pain. They are stopped by boredom. Pain feels meaningful. Boredom feels pointless. And that's why boredom is dangerous. Boredom appears when progress becomes steady, when the work is no longer new, when the challenge is no longer dramatic, when results are still delayed. That's the exact moment most people quit. They say, "I'm stuck. I'm not improving. I need something different." What they really mean is, This no longer entertains me. But growth was never meant to entertain you. Growth is repetitive, uncomfortable in a quiet way. Boredom is not stagnation. Boredom is stability without novelty. And stability is where mastery is built. The mind craves stimulation. It wants movement, change, excitement. But progress requires stillness, the ability to stay with the same task, the same routine, the same standard, day after day. Boredom tests commitment. It asks, do you care enough to continue when nothing feels urgent? If you only act when something feels urgent, your life will always be reactive. Urgency creates motion. Consistency creates direction. Boredom is where direction is protected. When you work without emotional reward, you prove that discipline is real. Anyone can work when it feels exciting. Very few can work when it feels ordinary. Ordinary effort is rare. That rarity creates advantage. Most people escape boredom through distraction, phones, entertainment, new plans, new goals. They trade depth for stimulation. Depth requires patience. It requires silence. It requires the ability to sit with yourself without needing constant input. That ability is strength. Boredom is also a filter. It removes people who are not serious. If you can stay when nothing is exciting, you will outlast almost everyone. Outlasting is a strategy, not flashy, not impressive, effective. You don't need to feel progress. For progress to happen, you need to trust repetition. Trust that effort accumulates, even when emotions don't reflect it. That trust separates professionals from dabblers. Professionals don't chase feeling. They execute standards. Boredom doesn't mean stop. It means simplify. It means refine. It means stay. Every time you stay, your tolerance for repetition grows. And tolerance for repetition is the foundation of mastery. Eventually, what bored you becomes effortless. What felt heavy becomes normal. What once required discipline becomes identity. And that transformation only happens on the other side of boredom. Don't run from it. Use it. Because boredom is not the enemy of progress. It is the gateway. Habits shape destiny. Your life is not a result of one big decision. It is the result of small decisions repeated every day. This is where most people get confused. They wait for a moment that will change everything. A breakthrough, a lucky opportunity, a sudden transformation. But success doesn't arrive in one moment. It arrives quietly, through habits. Your habits are your invisible destiny. They work in silence, every single day, whether you notice them or not. You don't decide your future once. You decide it daily, by what you repeat. Look at your habits, and you will see your future. If your habits are weak, your future will be unstable. If your habits are strong, your future will be powerful. Habits are simple, but they are not easy. A habit is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you wake up early, you vote for discipline. Every time you train, you vote for strength. Every time you study, you vote for competence. Every time you procrastinate, you vote for weakness. And the person with the most votes wins. Most people don't lose because they fail once. They lose because they repeat the wrong habits for years. Bad habits don't ruin your life overnight. They do it slowly. That's why they are dangerous. Skipping one workout doesn't matter, but skipping consistently does. Wasting 1 hour doesn't matter, but wasting every day does. Habits compound, just like money. Small habits, repeated long enough, create massive consequences. That's why discipline focuses on systems, not goals. Goals are temporary. Habits are permanent. A goal gives you direction. A habit gives you progress. You can have the best goals in the world, but if your habits don't support them, they are meaningless. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. Most people know what to do. Very few do it consistently. Knowledge is everywhere. Execution is rare. And execution is a habit. You don't rise to success. You fall to your habits. That's why disciplined people simplify their lives. They remove unnecessary decisions. They reduce friction. They create routines that work, even on bad days. Because discipline is not about willpower. Willpower is limited. Habits are automatic. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires motivation. It becomes who you are. That's the goal. Not to force yourself forever, but to train yourself until discipline feels normal. At first, discipline feels heavy, like pushing a rock uphill. But with time, the rock moves on its own. Your environment shapes your habits. If your environment supports distraction, discipline will always feel like a fight. If your environment supports focus, discipline becomes easier. That's why disciplined people protect their space. They are careful with what they watch, what they listen to, who they spend time with, because habits are contagious. If you surround yourself with excuses, you will make excuses. If you surround yourself with discipline, you will rise. Your habits don't just affect you. They define your standards. And your standards define your identity. When you repeatedly do hard things, your mind learns, this is who I am. Not because you say it, but because you live it. Identity is built through action. You don't become confident by thinking. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself. That's why habits matter more than motivation. Motivation starts things. Habits finish them. Motivation is emotional. Habits are structural. When life gets hard, and it will, you won't rise to your motivation. You will fall back on your habits. That's why discipline starts small. Not dramatic, not extreme. Consistent. One habit at a time. One promise kept. One day repeated. You don't need to change your whole life today. You need to change one habit and protect it. Then another. Then another. That's how discipline becomes identity. And identity becomes destiny. Most people want fast results. Disciplined people want permanent results. Fast results fade. Habits stay. Your habits are always listening. They are watching what you tolerate. They are learning what you allow. If you allow excuses, habits will repeat them. If you demand discipline, habits will follow. Your future is not built by what you do sometimes. It is built by what you do every day. So ask yourself, what habits am I repeating? What identity am I building? What future am I voting for? Because habits never lie. They always tell the truth about who you are becoming. Consistency over motivation. Motivation is exciting. It gives you energy. It gives you hope. It makes you feel unstoppable. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It fades. It disappears the moment life gets hard. That's why motivation alone never creates success. Consistency does. Consistency is quiet. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't feel dramatic. But consistency wins. Every time. Motivation makes you start. Consistency makes you finish. Most people wait to feel motivated. Disciplined people act first and let motivation follow. Because action creates emotion, not the other way around. You don't feel motivated and then work. You work and then motivation appears. Consistency is showing up on good days and bad days. On days when you feel strong. On days when you feel weak. On days when results are visible. On days when nothing seems to change. That's what separates the average from the exceptional. Anyone can be motivated for a week. Anyone can try for a month. But consistency over years creates mastery. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in the long term because they overestimate what they can do in the short term. They quit too early, not because they are incapable, but because they expect fast results. Consistency requires patience. Patience is discipline over time. You don't need intensity every day. You need reliability. Small progress, repeated daily, beats massive effort, done occasionally. That's why disciplined people don't chase extremes. They chase sustainability. They ask, can I do this even on my worst day? If the answer is yes, they build it into their routine. Consistency removes pressure. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. Miss a day. Come back. Fail once. Continue. Consistency is not about never failing. It's about never quitting. Perfection is fragile. Consistency is resilient. Life will interrupt you. Plans will break. Energy will drop. Consistency adapts. It bends, but it doesn't break. Motivation demands ideal conditions. Consistency works in real life. That's why consistency builds confidence. Every day you show up, you prove something to yourself. I can be trusted. Self-trust is power. When you trust yourself, decisions become easier. Fear becomes smaller. Doubt loses control. Consistency creates momentum. And momentum is dangerous. In a good way. Once you have it, it pulls you forward, even when motivation is low. That's why the hardest part is always the beginning. At the start, everything feels heavy. No results, no proof, no validation. But if you stay consistent, results catch up. The world rewards persistence, not talent, not potential. Persistence. Consistency turns effort into identity. At first, you force yourself. Then it becomes routine. Then it becomes who you are. That's the transformation. You stop asking, should I do this? You start saying, this is what I do. Consistency doesn't care about mood. It cares about standards. Standards remove negotiation. When your standards are clear, discipline becomes automatic. Consistency also protects you from burnout. Burnout comes from extremes, from pushing too hard. Without structure, consistency is balanced. It respects limits, while still demanding effort. It's not about doing more. It's about doing enough. Every day. That's why consistency lasts. Motivation is a spark. Consistency is a fire. A spark looks impressive. A fire changes everything. Most